Hey, what's up, dudes? Here we are, another day. Devlog entry. First, it's Friday. I didn't go to work today, I took a day off. I used my sick day. I've been sleeping, so I was like, I'll sleep. I don't really care. You know, I mean, it was Friday, I could have just went and, but whatever. I took a sick day. Probably regret it in the future, but it's done now. Alright, so let's set our timer here. Okay, so we're in client refactor. So we stopped here. That's where we stopped. And yeah, we're just going through this file and we're implementing the proper code to get things saved to the database through the client refactor file. Alright, so let's just review. So we have elif p1 game select choice is reconnect. So if we're choosing to reconnect, this would be whether we, well, yeah, so a reconnecting would only be possible to start the game, obviously. Get this up and running. This would be whether Alright, there we go. Now, back to it. Okay, so yeah, we have, whenever they choose to reconnect to the game, object name interval, and then that's just a tuple of the 3 different object names that are in the database that we're going to try to retrieve. So then we do cursor execute, and we're selecting the object name and the value from the save data table where the object name is in this iterable, and we put the amount of placeholders equal to the amount of elements inside of the iterable that is passed, and we verify that works via testing. Then we did rows equals cursor fetch all, because this will fetch all the rows from the select that we just did, and then we convert it to a dictionary using the dict method. Since they're 2 elements each, object name and then the associated value, we can convert each of those elements to a dictionary key value pair. So then we go to serialize client ID. So we have to serialize, rather, this is just accessing the serialized client ID that we retrieved from the result dictionary by accessing the client ID key to get the associated value. So yeah, there we have it, serialized client ID. Ensure, yep. So serialized client ID result dict. Ensures will always be assigned correct data to the correct space while we convert to a dict beforehand. And then we deserialize this data because it was serialized, because the values in the database are types, which is pickled objects. So we serialize the client ID using pickled loads, and that is the correct method, load with an S. We pass the serialized client ID to it. So it's deserialized. We do the same thing with the game ID. We grab the game ID via result dict at game ID key. Same note that we used beforehand. Then we have the deserialized game ID, which is the pickle.loads passing in the serialized game ID to deserialize it. We do the same thing for local or remote. We assign serialized local or remote equal to the result dict at local or remote key, and that is indeed. See, got a typo here. I notice. Let's see. So this is wrong. We put game local or remote. This needs to be just wait, what? This. What's going on here? What did I do? Okay, this is not right, guys. It's right here. Size local or remote. Okay, no, that's not. Yeah, that's right. I'm tripping. I just forgot that underscore there. Serialized tuple client ID, serialized client ID, game ID, serialized game ID, local or remote. No, this is supposed to be serialized. We pass in the serialized version. Assigned to the value column, which is a blob. So it has to be pickled to be serialized. Should be correct. Alright, now we go through this. Serialized local or remote, and then deserialized local or remote equals pickle load serialized local or remote. Okay, yeah, so this is all good now. Let's just verify real quick to make sure all these are written correctly. Serialized, but this is not right. And we changed this. Go. Alright. And so now we have our deserialized version of each of these. And now we can assign each of these. I think I actually would rather do it this, where we do the serialized 1, 2, 3, and then deserialize 1, 2, 3, and then we do well, we wouldn't call it deserialized ID, would we? We would just call it the actual like variable. Just get rid of this like that. So now we have client ID, game ID, and local or remote. Okay. Yeah, so I think this is right. Now, okay, now we need to assign the game, like, now we need to, what do we need to do exactly? Let's think about this. Game ID, people load serialized game ID, local or remote, and then we do if you use checkpoint system, get checkpoint ID from C. Okay, right, because we're reconnecting. This is where we would have to do checkpoint system. I'm not sure we actually figured out how we're gonna end the checkpoint system. I know we went over it like a bit, but we didn't actually finalize the decision there. After this though, I feel like we should do something with the client ID, the game ID, and local or remote. Well, I guess this means we would connect to a certain um, game. So just think about this. Um, okay, so I gotta figure out what exactly reached the next part of the road here. Gotta figure out what we need next. Okay, I'm back. Check something. Alright. This here this is difficult. Now we have our client ID and our game ID and our local remote. Now we have to use that information to connect to the proper game. But I think before that, we'll say use the above retrieved info to reconnect to proper through server. But should this be done before? But should this be done before, after the applying save all other saved game data? And I think, like, I would say we would probably want to all this save data. That seems like the right decision to me, because, well, if we connected first, that would like start the main loop, you know, where we draw all this, you know, where you'd start like drawing the screen in the main while loop and stuff. Well, technically this is still before the main loop. So I don't necessarily know what the correct answer to this is. Like, should we? I'm not sure that it matters, honestly. I think it could be either way. I think it's necessary to do one. I think I guess in the sense of like saying that you're letting the other client know that you're reconnected. If it was a remote game, connected game, that like you would want to connect first before you load in the data. Let the other client know like you're actually back. So I guess in that sense you would want to do the connection first. So I think we'll go with that. Let me just scroll through this file, see how much. Let me redo our extensions here, my Python extension. I need that one. And let's see how much of this file do we have left. So this is some code for checkpoint. Then we have our main while loop. And here is our factored structure of the main while loop. Guess we're gonna have another. All of a send and a receive. No, there isn't another section. There isn't a refactor. All that code works, baby. That's all finished code there. To reconnect game through server. Yeah, I guess at this point we would is this? What is this? This try except is for when we encounter game crashing errors or soft disconnect. And then we say while true, main while loop. And then put the main while loop block here. Except this is for when we encounter game crashing. Okay. Okay, it's the outer. So yeah, this is the try except for when we encounter error within the script. It will go to the except, then let's say we had a soft disconnect. If we just like the internet went down, clients, it would enter into this except loop or except clause, and then because we have this outer while loop here, it would with the while true, it would enter back into this. It would set up all the database and stuff. But this to signify that this is only for this to happen all the time, right? It would only be well, I'm trying to think like when do we need to run this code? If we have a soft disconnect, that won't actually, we wouldn't need to rerun this code. We have cursor, that would, if it was a soft disconnect within the script, need to rerun this. So I guess we could have a soft disconnect variable, and then that'd be like a client attribute. Okay, this would soft disconnect is equal to well, actually, we would have like a hard disconnect would actually be the metric we would use to determine whether or not we would run this, because if we did soft disconnect as a boolean and we started it off as false, we could start it off as true and say if soft disconnect is equal to true, run this section. But that, like, the namespace there implies that that means we had a disconnect, when in fact, if it was the first time running, it wouldn't disconnect. So we have it set to none. A soft disconnect, and then it would be set to none. Let's say if soft disconnect is equal to none, false. I mean, or true. This section. So if it's the first time running it, it's, which would be none. If it was a soft disconnect, we would then run it again. We would run, so if disconnect equals true. But if it was a hard disconnect, so let's say if it was our first time running this, so we ran this for the first time, soft disconnect equal to, it would run this code because we would say if soft disconnect is equal to none, or false or true, run this block. So then it would set the database up. Otherwise, if we did have a soft disconnect, that means soft disconnect would be set to true at the point of inception from the main while loop. At that point, it would it would set soft disconnect equal to true. So in that case, we would want it to check here at this point, soft disconnect is equal to none, or soft disconnect is equal to true. Yeah. So if it or if it would, that would both apply to our situation where we would want this. If it was a hard disconnect, like I don't know if it would enter into that except it's really complicated, honestly, to think about all the different. There's a lot of different things that come together for this. I mean, we could just let this run every time. Not that big of a deal. Because if it exists, it won't thing, and this will just assign the cursor. At the journal mode, which would already be, then this would retrieve it. It wouldn't cause any harm to have this run again. So now that's cleaned up. Yeah, I don't think we need to really add in any if or else right here. We would just because there's no way to it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work if we did. If soft disconnect is equal to none, that means it would be the first time it ran. Then, would we want it to run if that was true? No, we wouldn't, because it would already be set. And then, but if it was a hard disconnect, well, whenever we opened up the script again, it would be defaultly set to none. It would run again. And it would be changed to soft disconnect equals true in the case that we encountered a soft disconnect through the except clause. That would cause this. So yeah, in that case we could do that. We would say commands dot soft disconnect is equal to only if alright, we could just have it set to false actually. Only runs this if first time running or after hard disconnect. We have to have it rerun. If it was a hard disconnect, yeah, I guess if it was after a hard disconnect, we would want this to run because we have to set like the cursor. We have to create the cursor, the database. Well, and then we have to create a reference to the database. So run this on a hard disconnect. So we would want this to run first time running, or if it was after a hard disconnect. So yeah, we'll say that's basically the same language as if client soft disconnect is equal to false. And we wouldn't want this to run was if we had a soft disconnect wherein this code had already been, the script hasn't been terminated, therefore it doesn't need to be rerun. Let's go down here. Well, first let's go up here. Class client. Put this up. We're put this in soft disconnect. So we'll say all the way over here, and this is going to be a boolean, so we just put bool, and we don't need to transfer this. Go down here to actually create it. Here we'll say, whoops, this will be self.soft disconnect, and it will be set to false initially. Alright, and this is created to 21, and it's a boolean. It's to set to false actually, which enables database setup code run. Script. disconnect. We wouldn't want it run again since the script didn't crash there. So, except because of it sets this and sets back to false after setting up the database need to happen again. That wouldn't need to. That. None of that would need to happen again. It would already have happened. This though need to reconnect. So we would need that to happen. Except right here. Well, game crashed. Like, if it caused the game to actually crash, but I mean that's what accept is for. I think it would still run in case. Try, and then we try to execute a code, and then it gets error, index error, whatever error. Go to accept. It's for. It's gonna back to it. Which, it's gonna do what we want it to do. So yeah, so accept is try, accept for errors. Okay. Let's see what we want. And we'll put a note here that says this will trigger the. We actually want to set this to true. We want this to be avoid triggering preliminary voice setup code at beginning outer while loop, since in case of soft disconnect, we don't. Okay, and then we want to set client soft. Oh, this is supposed to be. And we're gonna want to set this to back to false if it's set to true. Reset. We're gonna go over here to right, so then once we enter into the main while loop, we're gonna say client soft disconnect is equal to false. Well, we should probably do it right before, I guess. I don't know, I'm not sure it really matters. Maybe it does. No, I would say if it was the very first line, that, yeah, I would want, yeah, that's where I would want it. This resets the outer bool back to false, so that it will well, would we even need to set it back? I mean, not really. Like, because if we hit another soft disconnect, and it was set to true, then we run that section, it would avoid that section. First time running, it would already be set to false. So I'm like, do we even actually need this? No, because if it's the first time running, it's always correctly. It's a soft disconnect, always run that code. And then if it was, oh, but we wouldn't want it to run that code in the case of a soft disconnect. but we would want it to run the first time. So yeah, it is necessary. Well, if you want it to be perfect, it says that it will go back to false. Here, you know, you could make the argument that it wouldn't need to be reset because unless it hard crashes, you know, that soft disconnect would always remain true, and if we hit another one, it would to skip that preliminary code. But if we hit a hard disconnect, it would automatically reset it back to false. So like, technically, we don't really need to set it back to false, but you know, just for like logging purposes, and like if we looked at it, it's kind of like makes sense to just it's more just for show, right? It's not really functional. Yeah, I guess we'll leave it. Okay, so let's go back up here. Okay, so this is where we were. We have to use their true info to the proper game. Dude wanted this first. So we'll do this before reapplying all their save game data to let other clients ASAP. Has reconnected in the case that they're waiting. Want to reconnect to the proper game. Well, we need to look at server, and the way this is going to work is server's going to be waiting for a connection, and then client is going to try to reconnect, right? So this is normally executed in the main while loop. Yeah, this is normally executed here in the main while loop. So this is going to have to be modified to reconnect, to meld with the new version of the code that we have, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so this needs to be modified. Start accepting clients. Since we're scaling if it handles more than 2 clients, it should probably be constantly run in its own thread. We would still want to accept new clients even when the first 2 clients have already connected. But wouldn't that mean we would need a new socket? Yeah, I feel like let's ask the great AI. Python socket for online card game with 2 players per game. Wouldn't I want only second socket. 4 players, 3 and 4. Yes, that's correct. In a 2-player card game, each game would have its own socket connection between the 2 players. For each pair of players, say players 1 and 2, or players 3 and 4, you would establish a unique socket connection. So you would have the game lobby, server, join, wait for the game to start. The server can maintain a pool of available players and pair them up as needed. Sockets for each pair. So here's the lobby where players can join away from. Game connection. Sockets. For each pair of players, the server creates a unique socket for them to communicate with. Maintain separate socket connection for each active game. Gotcha. Recurring client connections and assigns each pair of clients socket pair paired up for a game. Socket for each game. Once player paired a new socket connection is established just for them. The same happens for players 3. Set up ensures that each game has its own communication channel. You don't mix the communication between different games. So there's a server socket listen board. Let's say we can handle up to 4 players in total. 2 games, 2 players. Some players handle game. Takes 1 game much carrier with players and other connections. True. Okay, client address. Self.server socket.accept. Client address. Players append. Client socket. Self the players. It's 2 is equal to 0. Player 1 equals self.players. Negative 2. Player 2 self. Negative 1. Threading thread, so it starts the new thread in a game. That's actually good code for that, because it's using the negative index to access the most recently added players. It's harder, so we have each client thread, right? Yeah, we have each client thread. We have client thread, we have client thread, we have, yes, we have a different thread for each my game. Client called immediately after our thread. Yeah, because we have each thread communicating with one client. So that means each thread really hard. This is one of the this is a big hard part, having to refactor this start accepting client section, and I got to be real careful with this. Oh, because it's so delicate, guys. It's like handling, like a proper analogy for this. It's like working on very delicate electronics. If you just like mess, if you like mess up one tiny little thing, it just breaks the entire electronic device. It just ruins the entire thing. It's not going to be easy. To be really careful, and I have to be really smart about how I can implement this change. But I would think this has got to be our next step, because we want to reconnect to the proper game and reconnect. Well, can't do that without having the proper code for that, and the code for that is handled through server, really. So it's going to be a pretty difficult refactor, and what I want to make sure is that I'm preserving a stable of the game client in the right client file. I just want to make sure that that's still stable, so that just in case I F this up, River might actually make a new feature branch. I might do that. So we're gonna go ahead and stop here. I'm gonna take a break. Not easy. This is really hard. This is like the part that you dread. This is like what you don't want to do. Like this is the thing you didn't want to do. You're a programmer. This is not a fun time. So 373 and factor. That's when you just want to run away and hide. I just want to run away and hide to do that. This is the path that I have chosen, and it is not an easy one. So we'll just say we did extra 11 minutes. I'll just say an hour. Alright, I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna work out, get myself woke up because I'm feeling still sleepy, and yeah, try to come back and get some more done. Hopefully we'll actually be able to get started at this refactor. Let me put this in here for us. Certain this requires a refactor of certain sections of server pipe. Implies may need to create new feature branch creation of server refactor to work with without damaging current server structure, because involves refactoring functions such as start accepting clients, associated get Yeah. Alright. I'll figure it out hopefully, and I'll be back